Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything is good out there. My name is Josh Herman. In case you've never seen one of these before, this is a Gnomon Art Jam. Today we'll be making a sculpt. We'll continue working on what we were doing last week. Kind of have a couple weeks running project. Good morning. Hope you're doing well out there. We're going to keep working on a project we've done before, so I'm going to add that to the stream now so you can take a look at what we have. And I'll kind of do a little bit of a recap, and I'll recap this a couple times during the stream in case anybody comes in late, which is totally cool. But what we'll do is we're going to work on this project for a little while. And last week what we ended up doing was we took kind of what we have here and, well, we got it to this point, actually. So we had started with a sculpt that I had done in the previous week. So this is at this point 2 weeks ago, and kind of got it to this point, which was basically exploring the idea of, you know, something kind of Halloween-y, spidery, and just kind of exploring a sculpt. And we just kind of got to this point naturally. We didn't really have reference. We didn't really have anything that we were specifically looking for. And what we ended up doing last week was taking this and pushing it. But by doing that, we also wanted to find some reference. So we gathered some initial reference, which was here. I also grabbed some books from behind me. We talked through some of those and just ended up finding, you know, reference things that we thought would look well, work well. And just, you know, generally finding things that were going to work. So I'm opening up that image for myself so I can put it over on my other monitor. Put it over here. Good evening over there as well. Yes, I realize that. What the time zones are. Somebody was like, it's 8:30 over there. Or sorry, 30. You're on a half hour. That's interesting. All right, so I got my monitor up. We took some of this reference and we ended up using it to kind of push the sculpt a little bit further. And then additionally, we were talking about, you know, some design elements, 50-50. We're talking about, you know, straight lines, avoiding those unless that's specifically part of what you want to be doing, right, in your design, taking simple shapes and translating them into more complex forms, and just generally kind of speaking about rhythm quite a bit as well. And so what we did was we took this sculpt and we got it to this point. So we went in here. Now at this point we had also sculpted this very large but simple-ish spider. I think we ended up using this as our base mesh, which we had created using Z-spheres. So you can kind of see that some of the polygroups here are set up so that it's easy to sculpt on. And we ended up taking this character and kind of placing it in a way that looked like this, spending a little bit of time on the spider itself, and then continuing to sculpt. So what I did last week on this character was I took her from this element to this side. So you can kind of see we added a body. We'll hide the spider on this one. Added a body, kind of changed the proportions, and just generally kind of get it into something that's starting to feel a little bit more what we were wanting. And today what we're going to be doing, or what I wanted to show you, is a little bit of how I took that and pushed it even further. So over my off-stream time, I took the pose a little bit and adjusted the sculpt and made it kind of like this. So you'll see that there's a kind of an evolution of what's happening here, of taking the costume and pushing it a little bit further, exploring some of the facial structures, exploring the pose, but a lot of exploring the silhouette specifically. So you see certain elements are sticking out further, trying to get more emotion into the pose itself. I'm going to pop on some music. I think you guys should be able to hear that soon. Let me know if it gets too loud or if it's too quiet. All right. We'll get some Halloween style stuff in here to kind of get into the zone, and we're just going to start sculpting. So this again, this is where we were the previous week. This is what we went to during our stream last week. And then pushing it even further, kind of getting a little Lilith, if you guys are fans of Diablo, kind of getting some Lilith inspiration here. more spidery though. And then I even kind of added a little potential if we wanted to add like some elements for future costume, kind of get that coming in here. And then what I did is an exploration. What I did is, sorry, the music was really loud. Kind of a potential pose, just like a simple one. So kind of this walking, model runway pose that we can explore later. So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pushing this even further. We're going to try to start to finalize this as much as we possibly can. We're using ZBrush today. So this is a digital sculpting package. It's probably the best and most commonly used sculpting package in the world. So that's what we'll be using. I'm going to move my camera to this monitor so you guys can see me as I look at the screen I'm actually going to be working on. As always, if you guys have any questions about anything I'm working on, anything that techniques I'm doing, questions in general, I'm happy to answer those. Also, obviously, this is the Gnomon stream, so if you guys have any questions about Gnomon, whether it's Gnomon programs, Gnomon classes, curriculum, admissions process, anything like that, I'm super happy to answer those as well. Can I get some answers in the chat about the volume of the sound? Is it too loud? Is it too quiet? Is it right where it should be? Not hearing music. Interesting. Can't hear much. Volume is fine. It's all right. It's great. I'll turn it up a little bit. All right. Just a little bit louder on that point. If there's any issues, just let me know. What we're going to do is we're going to start by starting on the face for a little bit. So you can see what I kind of did from our last stream. This is what we did is we took this shit a little further, adding some more facial elements, kind of breaking it apart, and just pushing the design a little bit. And really all this is, if I turn the color off, is just pushing the design a little further. And I still want to work on this. I'm not super 100% happy with it. So I think I want to try to push it into a little bit more of a creaturey realm rather than where it is right now, which is very human. So from here to here to here. Are there any selective courses on ZBrush at Gnomon? Yes, we have several courses on ZBrush specifically. Digital Sculpting is the first course that I would recommend if you're interested in learning ZBrush, and we teach all those classes online. So you can browse our site and take a look at that. You can also get in touch with any of our admissions team, and they will probably be able to help you out with that. If I do this, you might be able to get that form for you. You're currently trying to get into 3D. Which software would you recommend? You have already tried Maya and didn't like it. I would recommend if you've already tried Maya. Maya's one of the biggest ones out there for sure. But what I would recommend is probably Blender. There's a ton of references and stuff out there for Blender. So if it's something that you're interested in as far as, turn this off, learning another 3D package, it has a lot of information out there. There's a lot of really good channels out there to learn Blender. I'm kind of happy with this direction. I want to take, I think, but I also can spend some time on this guy. Is she friendly or hostile towards everyone? I feel like she would be friend, just like I imagine, the personality would be much of that of like luring people in, deciding if they would be valuable to her, and then if they were, you know, keeping them within her range, but just like us, you know, using that idea of a web as part of her personality. Yeah, Blender is free, so always check that out. 3D Max is somebody from YouTube is using 3D Max for modeling. That's actually what I started modeling in, was 3D Max. I think it's still a good program. It has really valuable, a lot of really good tools, right? It's just probably one of the best for that kind of stuff, or it was. But I also haven't used it in probably 15, 12 years at least. So one of the things I'm getting to at this point is the mesh that I have is all one piece. So as I've been sculpting this from a conceptual standpoint, you'll notice that this, for example, is all one mesh. All of this is one mesh, and kind of the color that I'm adding to this is, in a way, it's sort of like doing more for me than the sculpt is. Like, the sculpt doesn't look as good without the color on. And so what I need to do at some point is start breaking this apart and creating multiple meshes so that there will be just one for the face, just one for the eyes, just one for the collar and all that kind of stuff. So I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time today breaking this apart so that we can focus on those individual elements. And I'm going to start with this piece here. This is the original actual element. You can see that the topology, which is this at the lowest, is going to be exactly the same. So this is just it being morphed around. So what I need to do is take this and kind of continue working on it, but break it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate it. I always duplicate my meshes because deleting and doing certain things within ZBrush are undoable actions, meaning you can't reset it if you mess it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the headpiece first, and I'm going to start working on that. And this is also where I need to figure out where it goes and how it goes, and maybe even what it's made of. Because right now it's all one color. So conceptually, I also have this element here, which is adding to the profile. That's something I'll want to be aware of. I am debating actually doing this right now. I'm going to delete this because I did say I want to take the face in a little bit more of a creature direction. So let's just start doing that now. I had I watched one of the, what was it called? Love, Death, Robots recently. And there's a really cool one where, like, from a distance, this creature kind of looks humanoid as it comes out of the shadows. But it was not at all when it gets close. Something about this that I was thinking about, that what if it was almost like, this is going to feel weird, but like, if I take this, like if it was almost like a puppet, you know? It was kind of being moved around. I don't know. there was something about that, like maybe if it's in the dark or something, people are never able to get close. So this isn't really a person. It's sort of that like reveal of there's more to what you would see. Yeah, anglerfish style, exactly. Playing around with the idea of that, maybe add some of these legs just so we can get in there. And there'd be a whole body attached to it to me, which is a little strange. Or there's this whole body, and like, how do you kind of play with that? But it would make you could do some really interesting shapes on the face, because eventually it would kind of break apart. But it's sort of this like, there's more. And that would also, like, maybe this is, I don't know. I thought about the idea of almost see this maybe sometimes like this way as well. We're just going to try some ideas really quick. This is obviously not going to be quick and simple, but you could do like this kind of a thing, where it's like being controlled from underneath. I like that gesture in general, though. Yeah, how would it move? That's kind of the question I'm running into. I think it's an interesting idea, right? Now, this is an interesting thing, though. Like, let's say I'm the writer or director of a film. This is often how it works, is they'll come to you and say, you've got this character, and they've been talking to them, the whole scene or something, and all of a sudden there's a reveal, and it turns into this. It turns into something entirely different. Very common, and so it's up to the designer and the artists to often figure out how that's going to work. So it's kind of a fun problem solving. Oh yeah, like a long butterfly's tongue. That's an interesting one. Can a person study any course that required without the requirement course to be completed? You do need to have at least some form of what I recall ability to show that you have like skills up to that level if you haven't taken those courses, because we don't want to just throw you in an advanced level course. So yeah, I feel sorry for her neck. Yeah, just kind of like this like wobbling thing. So maybe this idea isn't working in that way. Maybe we take this. I mean, we could do this. Is kind of a dumb idea, but maybe there's something there where we, would take. If I just take like a screenshot, this is something I do often. If I'm trying to solve a problem, and just paint on it. What if we, this doesn't have to be exactly a spider. We can change it to be whatever we want it to be. So what if we did something that had like these little things, maybe tiny little tendrils, and we get into sort of this little puppet master situation, and there's these like things that kind of come down. Maybe it looks like she's almost like into the wall or something. Let's choose a brighter color. This is a very extreme example of what I'm thinking, but if there's a lot of stuff kind of going on, it could kind of blend in. It could be part of her costume. I'm not sure though. It is But really it is the body. Like if I just duplicate this, somebody in the chat said, we could just kind of do this situation. Just put this around real quick and see what this feels like. This is definitely something I've seen before. It feels very. What's the movie to me? James and the Giant Peach. You guys have seen that movie recently? So this is an option that would work, right? We could do this. It feels like something we've probably done before, and maybe something we'll want to explore. What if her body was the relief of the spider's endoskeleton? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. Is how could we do something that feels? I think this works. It's not the direction I want to go. It's this part is the challenge for me. I think like the idea is somebody was saying like the head could open up. Totally, the head could open up and like split apart, right? And we can do some kind of fun reveal there. That's kind of what I'm wanting to do is break this apart and like do a fun reveal of like what this character would like morph into. But the challenge that I'm finding right now is if we go with a full character, when we go with a character that we want to say that this is what the character looks like, or we want to have a fun little pose that this is what the character looks like. How do we make the body function? That's the real question. Put smaller legs under spider that forms a chair. It's interesting. Or maybe it's just like a really gross reveal where it's like maybe the spider's like hosting, like it's a parasite, like it's taken over this thing, and the reveal is like it removes, and like maybe the body like gets ripped off, like we'll go super gross and like the thing with it, and it like kind of slumps, Maybe that's a thing we could do. And then the head would still do what we had kind of put up there, but rather than staying as like the human head, it would like crack, like split. So it would like do a thing where like it's just not really going to work the way I want, but you'll see, or like this could like split in a couple different directions. And then these elements as they got put together, sort of like the Mimic. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie The Mimic, or not The Mimic, but Mimic Creature movie. Not from D&D. It's they do this thing where it's like this bug creature, but from a distance it kind of looks like this, I think. It's like this, like it's weird abstraction of like the face and how it looks like a face, but this is obviously its face, but at a distance it kind of looks like a human, like this. This too. This is a really great creature. This is a really, really good one. So maybe we'll try something like that, where we'll take this and say we need to essentially turn this into something that needs to be removed. Somehow it's hosting this character. Yeah, the split apart. I love the reveal of the split apart. So we're going to have to figure out how we can do that. That means we know we want this to be a character, right? We need a final version of this, right, with that split apart. and we need a middle transitional state as well. So we have a lot of work to do this, but I think it was going to say, I think it'll be fun, and we'll have to find a way to just make this work. How does it manage the body? I don't really know. That will say, maybe it's like a long tendril. Somebody had said like it's a long tendril, and it has like this, like, let's add some non-spidery elements to it, right? We don't have to do everything specifically anatomy wise and nature wise to say this is a spider and it has to manipulate the same way. It's nice to have our base mesh here and to have a starting point, but we can really pull ourselves away from this and completely change it. So I think that's what we're going to do. All right, all that talking aside, we're going to start sculpting this character, and we're going to change the face a little bit to be something that can be more of an abstraction, and I'm going to take the head off so I can sculpt it as a separate element. I've already got some of this stuff where it's like, especially putting like a really large line down the center of it, doing something like this is immediately going to change. Even though you could have your color on it, it's going to make it read similar, but it's going to have different feelings to it. Yeah, that design and mimic is great. In the chat, what are some of your favorite creatures? Move this head. Is October, so thinking about creatures and Halloween. What are some of your favorites? Hellboy Tooth Fairy. Ooh, that's a good one. I actually like the Hellboy Tooth Fairy quite a bit. Skeleton Bear from Annihilation. Yeah, that's a fun one. How do you hide poly paint? This little brush right here in your subtool. Starship Trooper bugs. Yeah, man, those are great. What is this? Oh.
Video games are the latest craze to sweep the country and most of the world too. Millions of people are addicted to All
right, let's skip that. Starship Trooper bugs. Yeah, those are great. For me, Alien, the Xenomorph, Predator are two huge ones for me. I have another head under here. Yeah. Okay, I'm splitting this then. So I'm going to split, group split. Okay, that will give me just the head, and now I can work from just this object. And this, I brought in these ears and certain things like that, right, to kind of give it as much of a humanoid spin. I think we want to start treating those a little bit more like an abstraction. So what I'm expecting is that by the end of this stream, we're going to have something that's going to feel a little different, right? We're not going to have as much. I want to make this feel like it's one mesh that we can pull apart and change completely. Right, so what I'm actually going to do in a minute is I'm going to Dynamesh this into something new. You know what? Let's just do that now. So geometry, Dynamesh. Start at the bottom. It's saying, do you want to freeze your subdivisions? I usually hit no, and you'll see that it's way too low here. So I'm going to take this and crank it up. We'll put it at like 2,000. Do you see what that is? It's not bad. I'm going to have to resculpt a huge portion of this anyway, so I'm not really 100% needing to keep what I have, I'm going to put it to 3,000 just as a starting point. And this is to keep the information that I have, some of it. That's pretty good. Now I can take like the bottom of this and I can sculpt this away. Did I see Raised by Wolves? I did, yes. Raised by Wolves is great. Creature, interesting. I don't know if I really saw a full reveal of the creature, of like the ones that run around. It's kind of interesting though. I like how this like form is coming in here. And at this point, I'm actually going to turn off color. I know that when I turn on color, it's going to look cool, but I want to spend more time focusing on what the forms of these are, because I know I can come back to this color in a minute. So I want to spend a little bit more time creating the bones for the reveal that we were just talking about, where maybe this head splits apart, right, and turns into the front end of a spider. So it can change entirely, but what we do want to do is give it some elements that we can take in when we split it. So for example, I really like this kind of form, watching these two forms kind of meet in the middle. It can also tie into some of this elegance that we were trying to add with the headdress. Get some of that in there. I really need to figure out these eyes, right? So we talked about the eyes. I want to have eyes like this in some way. I like that the way I carved in here with these sort of vertical slits. Maybe that's something I can keep as that abstraction. And there's a chance that if these characters that are interacting with this creature that they don't necessarily know is a creature, it could just be painted. Like it could be a color that's just on top of it, right? So that's something I definitely want to play into. Or is it the actual creature's eyes themselves and it's on this sort of like long appendage that comes down? Higher chance of getting hired when it comes to portfolio. What kind of questions are you asking about portfolio there? Got a question from YouTube about that. 3D character designer, 3D character artist, production. Which one is more hireable? They're both hireable. There's jobs in all of those fields, so I don't think it's necessarily something about which one is more hireable. It's which one are you more interested in. I think I always recommend focusing on a career or something that you have interest in, right? If you have interest in something and you have passion in it, then do that. Get good at that. All right. Now I'm going to want to break parts of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create this form that's like pushed together. And this sort of abstraction that I want to create is I'm going to mask this. I want to create like, the idea of a brow, the idea of these shapes. This creature would have evolved at some point, right, to take on these forms. So it knows what it's trying to mimic, but it's not able to do it 100%. For like in some of this, like maybe there's some lines or designs in here that are actually very, like kind of what I was doing here. Like there's some of these plates almost. Do a green cat's eye. We can explore that. I don't dislike that idea. Let's just paint it in real quick. Let's see what we think. Go with the Gnomon colors. Something to draw them in, give them something to focus on. I want it to feel like, as a sculptural level, when I put it back on this brighter color so we can see it, I want it to feel more like it's the sculpture that's going to be broken apart. Take this and we're going to pull it apart. Welcome, everybody. Looks like we're getting some people coming in. If you guys have never seen a Gnomon art jam before or been to a Gnomon stream, we've been doing these for a couple months now, back since April, and we're just kind of sculpting on some fun stuff today. So we ended up making a character several streams ago that looks like this, and we've taken her and kind of pushed the design a little further and then pushed the design a little further, and now we're going to spend a little bit of time today breaking that apart to do a kind of a Halloween-y reveal. It's kind of what we decided on. Take this creature into something where the head could split apart and do something nice and gross with it. So that's kind of what we're working on. We're going to spend a little time figuring out how our abstractions are going to work, like how we're going to take some of this design and do that, and then we're going to continue. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of getting the shape of what I think some of this could turn into. I want to have something that like maybe folds out from the bottom. So maybe there's an idea of like this line that I carved in the bottom kind of coming all the way back here. This is movie magic, so the idea of something being able to change from what it looks like at the beginning to the end is totally fine. And this should be almost just like a little decorative element on top of it. Again, we have the color. We're fortunate that we're using a lot of a dark color here because it will mask a lot of what we've got going on in the shadows of that. So we're going to make sort of this head. And then what I think would be fun was we'll take this sculpt. We'll try to do this all today, at least with. I think the goal for today's stream is to take the head, get it to a point where it feels good, and then we'll take it, we'll remesh it, we'll make it one nice-ish mesh, and then we'll smash it to something else, right? I got a question. As a character concept artist in games, how many designs are expected that you have to make in a single day? What level do you have to take them for the initial sketch? That's very situational. It's really going to depend on the company that you work for, the director that you work for, the art director you work for. You know, sometimes you'll be expected to make something that's very simple, right? Napkin sketches, you know, maybe give me 50 thumbnails in a day, right? Other days it might be, let's do, sorry, I had to mute my mic so I could sneeze. Other days it might be, you know, by the end of, in 3 days, give me a final painting of an idea. But it's really going to depend. It's really situational. What? Where was that question? We're also streaming on YouTube, and we're streaming on Facebook as well. So if you have questions that you're hearing questions, they might be coming from YouTube or Facebook or Twitch, depending on what you're watching. Just a little further. You know that I want basically the whole head to split from like here. I don't want to go crazy on it at every angle, but I do want to make parts of it feel like it could split. So I am going to create like a really large crevice here that can be created in. And then I'm going to use the inflate brush to kind of suck those things together. Center. And that'll give me a nice element to carve into. How to show it. If you have work that's you feel like it's a professional level, and it sounds like the question from YouTube is if you have work that is to the level, how to show it to the right person to get jobs. Recruiters are obviously somebody you can talk to. Almost every company has recruiters, or HR sometimes doubles as recruiters, so you can speak to them. You can always find those people, email them, speak to them on Facebook, speak to them on Instagram, and try to connect with them in that way. That's a very common way as well. Now taking this from here, which is okay, here, which is where we started, here. I'm going to take some larger shapes in here. Example, I'm going to put, what I'm doing right now is I'm putting like a large here, because I know that eventually this is going to transform. This might not even be the eye of the creature at all. I do need to figure out where its eyes are coming from. I can sit here and finesse this for quite a while, but I do want to kind of get to a transitional point at some point during this. In the color being such a graphic color is disguising a lot of what the intent behind this is, and that's very intentional. I got a question from Twitch. I have a question with the Unreal Engine 5, high poly counts for models, and ZBrush being one of the few programs that can handle millions of polys. Do I think other software are going to have to redesign their software to handle the large polygon counts? I don't know about redesign, but they'll probably have to factor in that, right? That large polygon counts are going to be a thing. Maya can handle millions of polygons right now. A lot of what you see in those types of scenes is going to be reference objects, right? Reference or instance objects is very common. So I would imagine that it's going to be a little bit up behind, or a lot of bit of behind the scenes work to get that done. I think that what we're seeing here as compared to here, if I turn this off and see kind of what's going on. But when we turn stuff on, it shouldn't be a huge shift, because the graphic, again, shape is really taking a lot of what we've got, and it's also kind of making, I think, look just generally cooler, which I'm happy with. So we're going to keep pushing this, and we're going to keep pushing this into something that we're going to break into a big reveal and eventually, again, take the head and split it into kind of two pieces and figure out how we're going to do that. So I would love to try to do some really large blend shape with that. So that's something that I'm kind of thinking about right now, is how can I do that, or what should I do to do that within ZBrush. These ears that I had kind of put on here would probably just be some really large element, right? I like the idea of the eyes maybe being somewhere hidden within this, or these shapes that they maybe weren't, or a set of eyes. This could either be mandibles, which I talked about, like maybe a set of these are going to flop out. right? It's going to do something like this. You're going to see the mesh chair, but the idea of something kind of going like this, and then something kind of going like this, or this as a starting point, and then probably the head doing something like probably doing something that's going to split up and out. Start going with that. We're going to see a lot of messed up stuff in the object here, but we're going to try to get to something that starts to do kind of this type of a shape, is I think what we're going to get to. Just need to figure out how we're going to get there. All right, so that means I have some of these colored parts here. I'm going to flare some of this out so it's got a little, no, I kind of like that. Don't know what I'm going to do with these little hangy things. They'll probably need to go and be something else later, like just another mesh, right? Right, now that we've kind of got to this point, I'm going to go ahead and save. And we will start splitting this. So I'm going to remesh this. Well, I want to try this. I've never tried to do such a big reveal in one mesh, but I would really like to. So I'm going to experiment with some stuff today. Dynamesh, or do I want to do it from a nicer mesh is the question. Probably I want to go to the reveal mesh, right? I want to use, I want to take all that stuff and morph it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to store a morph target. So what that means is if I do any movements, any type, I can go to my morph brush and I can keep the elements that I want. That's interesting. Not intentional, but I kind of like the shapes that it made. But it's deleting my morph target though. You can push it back this way. I think I just need to turn off RGB. There we go. What that'll do is it kind of gives us a camera A and a camera B. Do I use Blender for modeling? No, I do not. I use Maya. But Blender is definitely an amazing piece of software. I think it's doing some really cool stuff. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to try splitting this out at this point. So we're going to have to, I accidentally Dynameshed, so I'm going to turn that off. Because that it will delete my morph target, which is not what I want. So we're going to take this and we're going to split it apart and try to sculpt it back together, basically. I'm going to take this. This. keep the middle masked if possible because I want that separation there. This is where I'm basically saying at some point I'll need a mesh that's going to be somewhat deformable of this to do this. And I kind of need to figure out what that mesh looks like. That's what we're doing now is we're basically figuring out what kind of a creature shapes we can make with this character, and then we can come back to this. Now we have a general shape that we kind of like. We got to rip this thing apart before we can rebuild it. Like I said, we kind of want to take maybe some of this. I like the idea of this being ripped over here. Sculpt something in here that'll be gross. I want to put this down. So this is one of our, this is morph target A, and this is morph target B. And so what we're trying to do now is figure out, you know, what some of these shapes are and how they can start playing into it. At this point, we can just kind of start making a creature. Knowing that this is also, oh, I don't know if that's what I want in the middle. It's got like a mustache. Finally, I'm here. Half of us missed you. Where were you? What happened? That's 1, 2. Color-wise. Oh, Raph is on. Raph is amazing. Is he on his own stream? Right, so I'm going to have to do a lot of design work in this, and I don't know if that green eye that I had put in there from the chat suggestion earlier is really going to work, because we're going to lose a lot of that. And I don't like how much of a face it really still feels like. I'm going to adjust that. Hello, everybody. So again, to kind of give you guys an example of what we're doing today. For those who are just joining, 2 weeks ago we did this on our stream. We kind of got to this, found some points for us to end. We took the design last stream and pushed it to here. Then we, over my week, I spent a little time pushing the design and pushing it a little further. So this is kind of where it went from here to here. And then today we're going to do a reveal, which is we're adding some more elements to this character. This is the big character. And the idea we had was there's going to be kind of basically a gross reveal where this is really the person in charge, thing in charge, which will probably have to change considerably to this. And this will be what would characters would be speaking to in the world. And there's going to be some gross reveal where the head, it's being puppeteered like almost like a parasite, and the head is going to split apart and probably suck into the body or do something. And we'll have to figure out that right now. But that's kind of the transition, and the body will make like limp and like fall like a husk to the floor kind of a situation. So that's what we're working on today. So we're taking this, pushing it a little further, working on that. Now, as I'm coloring this, some interesting shapes are coming up. It's definitely something I'm kind of enjoying. So the cool thing is that I can, add elements. I can add color to this, and we can kind of play around with it. I like the idea of some of the eyes like being almost back here, which to me would be back here. When you do retopologize something very complex model, is it supposed to be a crazy amount of time? Not always. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm really just trying to figure out what it's going to be. Like, I know that I eventually want it to be like this. I know that I want the face to feel more like an abstraction. So what I'm doing right now is I'm really going back and forth saying, what is this? What is the character going to look like? Right. So maybe this, if when this is here, it has eyes, eye here, maybe there's eyes back here. Where are they? I need to figure that out kind of all at the same time. And then I'll end up kind of going back and forth. So I'm going to like take my damn standard brush and I'm going to crank up the intensity quite a bit. And we'll put in some of these little areas where maybe there could be eyes, or we could add elements. I also can take my standard brush. I'm not on the standard brush. Do RGB and just paint in black, right? So the black, the morph target doesn't take into account color. So if I come in here and I put in like black, pure black, we'll say maybe like this is a really, turn off lazy mouse. This is an eye that's back here, right? There's an eye that's over here maybe, right? Maybe there's a couple smaller ones that are around, like we can just pepper those. And if I hit switch, you'll see where they kind of go. So they're still there. Trying to figure out where these are going to go. I don't think this is going to be a real eyeball. I think that should be something different. So I'm trying to figure out how this is all going to work, and then of course what this face is going to look like. Right now it looks like I just kind of tore it apart, which is, you can kind of see the mesh is just totally destroyed. That is okay. We'll figure that out in a minute. Every time you rip or tear or bring something, all of these in-betweens can be new colors, new shapes, new parts of the reveal. So I'm not super concerned about that. And even if the overall shape of the face changes, again, I'm not really super concerned about that either. As long as at the end of the day, it's creepy. Now, these eyes are looking a lot like eyes, which is something that's actually bothering me quite a bit. Don't want that to happen. Ideally I want this to like kind of go away, but I can't do that here. So I need to find a way to make these read differently. If I do something like that, I can get this in here. And we'll probably spend a little bit of time trying to do this reveal. Even now, I'm not in love with the shape that I'm making here. Like, I feel like we're just really basically trying to emulate a spider, and that's not really what I wanted. I like that the mandibles come out. I like that the face splits apart, but what it's actually creating isn't really something I love. I'm not sure if this is the way, this is going the way I want it to. I know that I could sculpt all this eventually and not very concerned about that. It's just that the overall design right now is not terribly inspired, and so I'm trying to figure out what I would need to do to adjust that. And this is a big part of it right now. That's a key element, so it needs to like almost just go further away. I mean, the idea that it could stretch and completely become something different isn't a problem to me. I think that, you know, this is a fantasy world, so we could do whatever we wanted. So maybe it just needs to, I just need to be more comfortable pushing it and breaking it. What? That's like almost friendly. Not a fan of that. Part of this is I just need to figure out what that shape needs to be, right? And right now I'm kind of struggling with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce to something else. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to work on this character here for a little while. What do I want the end result to be? We know what we want the beginning result to be. Can't read. There we go. Switch. So we know what the beginning result to be this. The colors got mixed around when I did that, but we can fix that. So we know what the end result, or sorry, beginning result to be that, and end result is going to be something on this. So what I'm going to do is use this mesh as a sort of an exploration. And just spend a little time exploring that. I'm going to hide some of these legs because they're big and in the way. Looks like I actually have to subdivide first. And at this point, we're always saving. I also kind of want to get a little comfortable with just moving this and adjusting this. Right now, I'm not incredibly, to me, it's just a really large spider. Probably to all of you, it's just a really large spider. So I want to change this so it can be a little more creaturey rather than just being like, oh, it's obviously like a really big spider. Cool. That's fine. Even if we put spikes on it, even if we give it an amazing element to it at the end of the day, right now it's just a large spider. So I want to add, you know, some flavor to it. That's kind of what I'm talking about. So let's see if we can do that. That's probably going to require more than just, you know, fancy. Like what I do what I'm doing right now is adding some lines and some designs. I could do this all day long, right? And we could fancy this up, but it's still at its core going to be a spider. So we really need to change that up. And that's probably going to be heavily based on the legs. So we'll end up doing that shortly. Is video game versus VFX application factoring into your design, form, or sculpting at this point? Are you considering that it may be used for either? No, not at this point. At this point, I'm mostly thinking about design, just generally design. What will look cool? What's the intent of the story? What am I trying to get across with the character? Never hurts to think about those things early. I'm probably going to end up adding a couple more limbs or things to this. I'm going to make sure I have my reference up too. I'm going to hide the preview window so I can have my reference in the chat up. All right. Taking a look at my reference, which you guys can't really see. I guess I'll pull it over. We did this last stream. We gathered all this reference. So there's some elements that I really like in this. What I love about these shapes is that they're really hard to decipher. And I really like this element of these, a smoother form with like holes, pits in it. So kind of some combinations probably of those two. So I'm going to go to a brush that I like to use, which if you hit comma, you can get in here. You go to brush at the top, and I go to smooth, and I use this smooth stronger brush. This is just a much stronger version of the smooth, but it is really good for creating planes. So maybe I want to add some of this planar element to this character. Now, again, we do want to figure out what this character, as I go down here, we had talked her head would be splitting at some point into something, right? So that may be part of this. It may be a very small part of this. It's hard to know right now, depending on how big this character is. You know, maybe it is more of just a puppet, right? And this is like a small little element of it that's being split apart, and you know the shell cracks apart, and you know the exoskeleton parts of it fall off, right? We could do a really interesting reveal with that, where there's just little elements of it that are remaining, and maybe it's just the eyes that are in there, and it's puppeting something separately. But we want to have that reveal. We had done one earlier where we just basically put the woman's face on the spider, and that's obviously something we could do, but it's probably something we've all seen before. So looking at my reference over here, I love the idea of some of these larger shapes where they're just very undecipherable. So that was part of what I was wanting to do, was getting some of this in, like bringing almost like some aquatic reference in, armored quality to it. And that's also going to tie into some of the themes that we're playing in here, right? These spikes, like kind of large, almost like a buttress feeling, buttresses with like things sticking off of it. And then within some of those areas, maybe we can explore. Hopefully, most of you don't have tryptophobia, which is the fear of these things with tiny holes in them. For some reason, my mask keeps going away. We can dial some of these in. Odd that it keeps doing that. And just like push them in. Do like a little inflate around those. Mesh is too small right now, and I'm using the crazy strong smooth brush, so it's having some trouble doing what I'm wanting to do, but kind of this type of a vibe. We don't have any of that in here though, so this is something we might want to play up at some point, is like adding some pits. Something that always creeps me out is spider babies, like them coming out of little sacks. It's terrifying. And to me, that is one of these things that, like, maybe we could play that up in this. That's what all these little holes are for. Ugh. In some ways, it actually creeps me out just thinking about that, though. So. And again, we do need to do more than just decorate this. This isn't just a cookie that we're putting stuff on top of, so we are going to have to change probably a lot of the overall shape and add quite a bit of stuff to this to really push it further. Especially starting with what we started with, I'm probably going to have to spend quite a bit of time adjusting shapes, whether it's changing shapes, making some of them feel longer, making some of them feel smaller, adjusting the proportions of them. I might add in some more almost humanoid elements to them. I kind of like the idea of almost trying to get into some architectural shapes, like some very beautiful rhythm shapes. That's a lot of what we had in our reference, was kind of these big shapes that would go back and forth. Yes, this is based on nature, but there's nothing that needs to keep us incredibly bound to that. So if we want to add another joint, we are welcome to add a joint. This is creature design. This is not a bitter sculpting. Just kind of thinking like what it would be. There was a question earlier in the chat, which was a really good question, which was, when people interact with her, like, is she friendly? Is she mean? Like, is she aggressive? And I think there's this sort of like welcoming, like this welcoming but dangerous. So I kind of want to bring in some of these elements of like almost an enveloping, that they're welcome to enter, but they can't necessarily leave. We're gonna some of these spiders and stuff that I'm looking at. And at this point, I'm probably going to stop looking at just spiders, to be honest, because they are. If I just look at that, I'm just going to make spiders. Getting some other reference in there that's not that can be super useful. Hotel California. Maybe there's like these large bulbous to it. I'm obviously doing one leg right now. I think getting some of these individual elements is helping me have an idea of what the rest of it could look like. One of my really good friends did a Gnomon DVD, actually, which you guys should check out, Devin Fay. And one of the things he does is he's an environment artist, and he'll often do something called finding the crack, which is where sometimes when you're working on something, you kind of get stuck and you're not entirely sure where to go. And it's nice to sometimes just spend a little bit of time sculpt a crack in something, right, and go from there. So as you'll see, like this element, where we were last week, I'll put in this spider. This is what we were at, and this is where we're at now. So we're definitely pushing it quite a bit. And even though, we added another joint, we're probably going to add a couple little more arms, a little more things in here to really push this a little further, because we've only kind of done this one leg. What is this beeping in this song? All right. If anybody has any questions, though, please, again, as always, feel free to ask. If you got questions about art, you got questions about Gnomon, happy to answer any and all of those. So I kind of want to get a couple more little gesture in this that's going to maybe like, whoop, not that one. Kind of that enveloping that I was talking about, like taking it, and maybe it kind of steps inward. It has that kind of a feeling to it. And it's all about the feeling, I guess, that I'm trying to portray, right? It's not about like, oh, I want to make one thing. I want to make a spider person. Yes, okay, cool. That's what we kind of started with, right? Start with a spider person, and then we made a spider. Well, actually in here. So we made a spider, and then we made this thing, and then we expanded on that for a little while, right? And then we built on that and built her costume out. And then we say, what's the vibe we want her to give across? Then we kind of continue with that and say, okay, now let's push everything a little bit further from here to here. What is this going to be? Who is this character going to be? And so, like, maybe even on these little things, we get like this. Let's get a little less spidery and get some. We could have these like little tendrils or I touched the wrong thing. Got a question from the chat. It sounds like more of a comment about when do you just give up? Are you talking about just a project or art in general? I've been there on both. About a project, sometimes you just have to give up based on time. If it's about art, which it sounds like it is, I'm going to draw a quick illustration for you. Draw this in my class, but something you'll often see, maybe you're experiencing this right now, is I'm going to switch over to this. We'll use white as our base. a little larger. This is time down here. And this will say is your skill. Skill. There's a theory on this, and I don't remember it, so apologies if anybody happens to know this. This is typically the trajectory that you expect to go at when it comes to art. You expect to do this. You expect to get better over time. But in reality, you tend to do this. Right? You kind of get stuck in a rut. And there's a difference here, which is called this gap. So if this is the green as you're expected, this is your eye. We'll almost call it your eye, right? When you become an artist, your eye gets better. Your eye, meaning your ability to critique, your ability to know what looks good, always gets better faster than your ability to get good. So we'll say your green is your eye. And the blue is going to be your skill, your actual, your current skill, right? And what happens is you start working on art. This is the beginning of your art journey. You start at 0. This is arbitrary numbers, but you want to get to 100. You want to get to, or to say pro. You're a pro artist or not, but you want to be a professional artist. And you're starting, and you start at 0, and you start working on art. And you can immediately see somebody else's, or you see a professional's art, or you see your own art, and it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to be. You wanted it to be here. You didn't want it to be pro level, right? But you wanted it to at least to be here. But for some reason, it's very frustrating, and you're only right here. And this is going to continue through essentially your entire art career, right? And you're probably right around here. What happens is your eye will continue to get better. Your ability to critique art, to know what art is good, is going to continue to get better. But your skill doesn't always keep up to that, right? You can look at a painting, you can look at a movie, you can look at a game and say, this is incredible art. I love this, right? This is amazing. I would love to make something like that. I'm going to do some fan art. Your fan art doesn't turn out as good, right? It turns out here, whatever that is. And the difference you're going to notice right here is this area, which we'll color in some other color, is the gap. Right? So this distance here, this is normal. This is very normal to be going through and seeing art and seeing your art not meet your expectations, not meet whatever it is, not progressing at the trajectory that you wanted to progress at. This is very normal to be in this area and to see this distance and to be very frustrated at this distance, at that gap. I want you to know that's extremely normal to have a path where your eye, the green line, advances faster than your skill. That's very normal. And it's extremely normal to be upset and frustrated at this gap right here and say, I'm never going to get here. I'm never going to get this good. I'm never going to get to the point where I can do X, right? And I think the number one thing I would recommend is not to compare yourself to other artists and compare yourself to you. Because what you'll notice in this line is, well, we'll make another color, purple. Notice that even over time, your skill is getting better. There is improvement here. At every one of these stages, there is improvement. And this is important for you to celebrate, not this. This little triangle here that I'm making of I didn't get to make, or this little wonderful thing I'm making. A cone. I didn't get to this. this gap of where I didn't get to is frustrating. But in reality, what you need to do is go open up some art from 5 years ago. Go open up art. If you just started art, look at art you just did from 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and see the improvement. This is the important thing to keep in mind when you're doing art, because this part is what you should be celebrating and noticing that, yeah, at a certain point, my eye was only this good. My eye was only good enough to get here, and I couldn't even do that. But now I'm here. I'm currently here. Blue, we were doing this current. Blue, I'm currently here. My eye is better than it was over here. I'm now actually better than I was ever able to critique, ever able to see, right? So we're just breaking it down in a way where you're celebrating your achievements and not sitting back and saying, "Oh, I suck. I suck. I can't get here. I can't get here. I'll never be here." That's not true. It's about time. It's about the investment you put into it. So celebrate the improvement you make. It's okay to critique. It's okay to be hard on yourself. It's okay to want to get better. Absolutely, it's okay to want to do that. But don't focus on this. This is not what you want to focus on. Focus on this. All right, where were we? We were making a weird spider, or beginning to make a weird spider. So we added some extra little limbs here. I kind of like the idea of doing some like things in here. Do you think artists can get in a rut of creating similar assets or elements of assets? Do you do any practicing exercises to keep your shapes and design choices evolving? Absolutely, they do. Absolutely, yes. No question about it. I think that is definitely a thing. I call it recipes. The way that I try to break that up is by looking at reference. Looking at reference and or finding other inspiration. The reason I call it a recipe is, let's just very quickly open up a sphere. I use no reference whatsoever. I will very often start sculpting a face, and it will have exactly the same proportions, shape, size of what I sculpt, right? And it's just something that I'm used to doing. If you're a cook, if you cook your own food, you can probably cook the same recipe over and over and over and over and over, and you know exactly at a certain point, when you start making a recipe, you have to measure all the ingredients, right? So I'm going to measure, just like art, right? I'm going to measure the face. What is the traditional, this is the line in the middle. Where do the eyes go? Where does the mouth go, right? Where is all that stuff? I have to do that at the very beginning when I'm learning, because I don't know it. I don't know the recipe. I've never made it before. So I say, oh, okay, this is here and this is here, and I can start sculpting a face from scratch because now I know this recipe. But often, and just like I said with food, like if you've sculpted before, if you've made this recipe multiple times, after a while you don't have to look at the recipe. All you have to do is just kind of remember from your brain and say, oh, that's enough salt, that's enough cheese, that's enough beans, that's enough whatever the thing you're making. Apparently I was making a burrito in my brain, but whatever it is, right? You can start sculpting something from scratch. You can start making something from scratch without looking at a recipe. But if you want to make something entirely different, you want to make chicken parmesan, and you've never made chicken parmesan before, you should probably look at another recipe. And what I mean by looking at a recipe in art is not going to be, this is a terrible sculpt, but you kind of get the point of, I can make something, but I'm using my internal, bar of things I've made before, and it's probably going to look similar to things I've made before. But if I want to make something different, I should go and look at another recipe book. I should go and taste some more food and see if it's something that I like, right? And how do you do that in art? You go look at reference. You go look at all kinds of different things. You look at, you go outside. You go outside and you travel around and you explore the wilderness, right? There's all kinds of different ways you can find new recipes. It's about being exposed to them. Rarely are you ever just going to stumble upon a new recipe, right? Rarely are you going to say, oh, I just discovered how to invent beer. And I learned how to ferment randomly, and I can now make a whole new set of things. It's not going to happen. You maybe get lucky once or twice and find something you've never done before or a shape you've never done before, but it's not going to get you to where you need to quickly. I can sculpt this without using reference because I've sculpted heads before, but it's probably going to look like other heads I've sculpted. So that's what my brain is using as reference. So that's kind of that. We've got a question from Facebook. When you are working for print, do you change the units from units to millimeters, etc.? I changed my ZBrush and noticed that standard units are 1. I don't actually change it. I typically will adjust afterwards, especially if I'm doing a print and saying I want this print to be 6 inches tall, 12 inches tall, or something like that. I'll adjust then, rather than doing it at the very, very beginning. Now, if it's something that I'm working for a specific scale, which I haven't done in a long time, honestly, that'll change, to be something where it's like, oh, I'm doing X, and that's why I'm doing it this way, right? I want the lines to be X thickness, or they can't print at a certain part. Yes, sorry for not answering questions about what software this is. This is Photoshop and ZBrush. So right now we're taking this sculpt and pushing it a little further today. Adjust some of these legs. That's what I was doing next. I want to take them down like I did here again. I like how this is creating this kind of an interesting shape. I want to just almost remove this head. Part of me is like, this is what's making it feel like a spider to me. Obviously, it's got 8 legs. It's got a big abdomen, right? That's what makes it feel like that. But I'm wondering if we should just remove this almost entirely. I think we're going to get something more creative. Recipe, another perfect example. I started with all the bones, all the ingredients to make a spider, right? I said at the beginning, I said we're going to make a spider, or at least that's our initial reference point. So I created all the bones I needed to make a spider. So what do you think is going to happen? Well, I'm probably going to make a spider. And it's going to end up being almost exactly a spider. So now when I'm here saying this is feeling too much like a spider, why? Well, because Josh, you started with everything to make exactly that. So break it up. So that's why I'm going to obliterate some of this and start adjusting some of these shapes, and we'll see what we can come out of it. I don't mind the 8 legs. I think the 8 legs is actually something I still want to work with, and maybe that's one of the key elements that really calls back to that. A spider or something else. Kind of want this to feel from the front like it's like these really large claws. This kind of idea of welcoming, but also like as soon as you get in here, like you're never getting out. That's kind of the vibe that I want this character to portray. I kind of like how I just added this other little limb in here because I think it might make. I'm paying attention to just generally the silhouette these are making together. This is what we started with. This is where we are now. What do I think is of Blender as an alternative to free 3D software? or it is a free 3D software. I think it's great. I think Blender is a great reason to get into 3D. I think it's a great way to explore 3D. I think that there's probably going to be some advancements from other companies to compete with Blender. That's what my expectation would be. That's what I would do if I was one of those companies. And I think it's a great learning tool. And there's a lot of stuff you can do in it too, from a production standpoint. So I think it's great. I think it's definitely worth exploring, especially if you have limited funds or don't have access to like an educational license of something. So yeah, I think it's cool. Something I think I want to do, I just noticed, is like the digit length of all of these is kind of the same. Meaning, like, if I just look at this, look at the length of this to the length of this to the length of this, it's all roughly the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break that up. I have the floor on. So that means that this is now a much lower object. You can also use the bottom. Sometimes I just use the bottom of the line of ZBrush where the canvas is. Question from YouTube. How do you approach studying or practicing on your own? Do you go with the feeling and decide, today I want to learn about bugs or animals, or is it more structured program? Well, that's a good question. I typically will do whatever interests me. Now, I assume you're talking about just like things outside of traditional school. Like, if you're going to school, you're going to have some elements of it that will kind of guide you in a direction. That's what I'm assuming you're talking about. I'm going to add that other limb in. I added one here and here. I think the front ones could benefit from that. Creating a little bit of a weird tangent there that I'm going to try to avoid. All right, let's get these last legs going, and then we'll play with the proportions a little more. Anybody's got any questions? Again, I'm happy to answer, happy to do whatever I can to help. So let me know if you got anything, and I'm happy to help. I'm liking how this is generally progressing, though, from where we were. I think you can start to feel a lot more character in this. I'm going to do a little bit more on these last legs, though. Also, adding those extra joints is still giving that vibe of the, an arachnid, but it's not just screaming spider as much to me anymore, which I'm very happy about. Now the question is, do I continue that? Meaning like that there's all these other little limbs coming off of it. The limbs don't have to all be this big and be doing the same thing. The arrangement I have, I actually quite like. Like, do I want to do this is kind of, I guess, what I'm saying. Match what's there, or should it be different? Certain parts of the legs could do different things. This one is more about moving the body than it is about like grabbing something in there. Alexander Howell from YouTube says he teaches ZBrush to high schoolers. Awesome. After 3 weeks, when I cover the basics, what would you recommend as a great first project? That's a good question. I guess the question that I would ask you is, are you trying to just inspire them to sculpt in ZBrush, or are you trying to help them build their fundamentals? If you're wanting them to build fundamentals, then sculpting a bust using one of the preset things that are already in ZBrush, like sculpting the demo head or sculpting from a sphere, is going to be a really good way for them to understand human anatomy and breaking that down and translating that. If you want them to just be inspired, creatures are always the way to go. Creatures, characters, monsters, redesigning something from a film, from a movie. But always a bust, I think. Head and shoulders, the head from a sphere. I mean, it feels like something that can inspire somebody to work on something, and they don't need to, have tons of experience. Creatures are always, especially if you're just wanting them to get into it, creatures are a little more forgiving because it's not a head. It's not like saying sculpt a self-portrait. That's a difficult challenge. You know exactly what you look like, or even a friend and your classmate look like. So to make them happy and have fun, creatures, otherwise humans. Likenesses are really difficult. Gotta get some more of these spikes in here, and I'm kind of liking, that these little dots that we would put in there. That could be something I could put as like a texture at ends of these things. Like they're almost sticky. It's sort of sick, like it's oozes out of those. So there could be like, I don't have the subdivision to do it, but you could put like lots of these little, crank this up, lots of these little dots at the end that could like ooze a substance to help grab onto something. Especially after the beginning of the stream where we kind of decided that this character, the creature, is actually the main thing at the beginning of the last stream, and I had been thinking maybe this is some sort of like a companion, but now with the reveal that we're kind of talking about, it's a little heavy for me. The reveal that we're kind of talking about, this is the real threat. It needs to feel more intelligent. It needs to feel dangerous rather than just threatening. It can't just be something that's like, you know, a thing that's used to force things to happen. It has to be something that's dangerous in its own right from like an intellectual level. His last leg. Same thing. Kind of from the crabs, but I like how some spiders have this shapes as well. These bigger, more bulbous shapes. But a lot of the crabs kind of have this. It just feels more alien. And that's an element. Right now, this is very natural looking, so we could bring in a lot of alien, meaning totally not natural feelings. I want to add a little bit more gesture to it. It feels like the front is just so long right now. That's really stretching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring some of this gesture into the back. Definitely broken a rule on this leg here. So maybe I'll do a small one. So kind of going from this to this. Also, the scale is changing significantly, as you can tell, which is something I want. That means we should probably adjust this too. Part of me says we should just do this. Then that gets very into spider shapes again. It's an interesting looking spider. It's kind of like an orb weaver, I guess, but maybe not the direction to go. There was that initial piece of reference. Yeah, that's an interesting idea of having the hands come out from the face like they would be here, I think is what you're saying. Like the parts could be like moved there. That might be a better way to do it rather than like the front legs from the body. Just like rips through it or becomes it. Some of these synth waves with all the words in them, you just can't. They start to like drive me crazy. Everyone wants to like really have a bigger silhouette. Yeah, I kind of like that smaller one as well. The bigger, I like the idea of the bigger one, but it just kind of turns it into like a big spider. There's something about the fissure, the element that we were talking about before, with it feeling like it's catching you. So maybe something that I want it to be bigger in general. I think the super tiny one that we had here, I think works, but it's maybe a little too small. I think maybe something that's like this is going to be the appropriate size. I want to connect this a little more though. Concentration. Yeah, sometimes I watch the videos of myself afterwards, or I see the thumbnail, and my face is so intense. So we're going to probably have to sculpt something. What I'll probably have to do is bring in another object to sculpt on this. I kind of want to do this real quick too. Save. Is there some difference when creating 3D models for film and game production pipelines? From a high poly standpoint, yes and no. You're going to mostly just be trying to create the best high poly as you can. You do often in film have to deal with things like blend shape. You know, you do this in games as well, but often games it's not as much on a high poly. But you know, doing film, you're often going to do a lot more blend shape stuff, especially if it's creatures. So you need to be somewhat more aware of that. But at the end of the day, you know, using textures to get details, breaking things down, it's going to be all kind of the same. The skills definitely translate. How important is to say versions? Extremely important. Not only just because you might want to have the that part of your might want to see an earlier iteration, but especially if you're working in a production, maybe they like the previous version more than your current version. you don't have that version, you are screwed. I think they're somehow stuck to each other. What about the forthcoming Unreal Engine 5? Will you be able to insert even more high poly film quality 3D assets? I think so. Yeah, I think you're already seeing that a little bit with, you know, things like virtual production and shooting on LED walls. I think that's going to continue to be a very common thing to happen. So I am personally very excited to see what happens with all that stuff, because you're going to have like huge like, movement in trying to capture things in camera. It's only going to get better. It's just starting now. So I think it's going to be awesome. I don't think it's just about Unreal 5. It's about trying to capture in real time. These little chicken wing hands. The hands will have to be adjusted quite a bit, but so I almost want to invert them.
Too bad you're not double jointed. Because if you were, you'd be able to bend over and kiss.
Not loving those there. More that I look at them now, especially from further away. That feels better than what I had done here. Even the tinier ones. Oh. What we're going to do is we're going to insert. I'm going to actually insert this. Need to do a sphere. Doesn't really matter. Down here, we will insert a polysphere. Hide her for a minute. Done. I'm putting this in here because I want something to sculpt on that has more resolution. This is where we were kind of talking about, maybe some of these are in here or something. So where should we put some eyes? Should there be eyes? Kind of color it if you want to make sure that you're doing something that seems to make sense. I'm going to look at my reference for a sec. Maybe something that would help us is to get away from the mouth shape. But now we're trying to, I keep coming back to this kind of thing. We've all seen this before, right? I think that's bringing it right back to what we've been doing. Maybe it doesn't have to be that at all. We'll just explore some different types of those. I could obviously, do a classic this thing. Like, but it's creepy. We could do a vertical mouth, which is always kind of terrifying. See that a lot in Ridley Scott stuff. The sort of like, there's a row of teeth. The lamprey thing is another option. This. I'm getting a lot of that spider vibes from all this stuff I've carved. I want to try to avoid that if possible. Let's get away from that. Just trying some different shapes. Tremors 2 bipedal creatures had crazy head-eye area. Yeah, I'm sure. I feel like I remember seeing the Tremors creatures and them being pretty cool. I haven't seen them in a long time, though. This up a little more. Certain shapes, as soon as I sculpt them, immediately call back. Squid mouth like a beak. We could try a beak. If that's what you're saying. Birds genuinely are one of my least favorite creatures. I think they're terrifying. Birds freak me out. Birds. They're just so like little dinosaurs. Can never tell what they're thinking. It's like they kind of like look at you. You know they're looking at you, but they keep doing this. Nope, 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 nope. Let's do some mouth research. I just Googled crazy animal mouths. So I do like this kind of thing. There's always this, which is fun. I think that's several birds inside of another mouth. Ooh, yeah, that's always fun. The star-nosed mole. Those are interesting. Just kind of like this is kind of what I was thinking. The inside of a leatherback turtle's mouth. Or it's more just like a maw. That's really the term. The term toothy maw. Look at this. Look at this. I kind of like the idea of this, though. So let's explore some shapes. This is one I want to try. So I'm going to open this. Definitely want to try like this. Where's that big one we had before? Looks like your slipper. And there's always like something like this, which is like really long teeth, but I don't think that really fits this because I'm gonna put these little hands right, and I almost like again this idea of like enveloping. Like if they get close to you, it's like almost you can't get out, right? And so that's kind of what I like about this is almost like all these little hands that would like be grabbing or little I don't know, something that's like pulling them in consistently. Thousands of tiny little arms that like grab you and pull you in. So that's where the maw element sort of sticks out to me. This is our beak version. which I think would be fine. And it could be inside of a beak. It could be inside of a beak like the turtle. This is just the mouth. Let's just explore this a little further. Let's first try that. I'm gonna get this leg out of here. I love this shape. It's a difficult one to make. It's a statement piece. I feel like something in Avatar had this. Last Airbender Avatar, not Avatar Pandora. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to hide one of them. We'll say it's like this shape. In a weird way. I don't know. They have more like shapes inside. Maybe we can combine these. Pop. He's yelling. Not totally sold on this idea. I think there's something there. Assuming that there would be all kinds of crazy teeth in here. There's definitely like the idea for like something in here. It is giving me like a nice place to put things, whereas I could just also go here, which is also fine. Something about just a bunch of skin like that is always kind of gross. So it could be like that, and then it's like. Just got a question that says, how many hours can I work without a break? That's a good one. Usually no longer than three or four. At that point, I also kind of like need a break just visually so that I can kind of come back with a fresh eye. Attached to that. I want more of those, to be honest. I kind of want to do this. Can I come down? Like hidden first. And then like this. So it's like this. And then they go. Now I got to figure out what this looks like. Any advice for 3D beginners? What were your struggles when you were learning to use 3D software? Just push through. I guess it's a challenge learning a new software, especially if you're trying to get your head around 3D, the mindset of 3D. It's not easy. So, take a minute and accept that it's going to be a challenge. And I think that's a kind of the best recommendation. Give yourself goals. Having goals is always very helpful. Know that this is the end shape. how this plays into our reveal, which is what we started the stream about, which is with our other character, I don't know yet. I really don't. This is way too spherical. All right, I think we're getting kind of close-ish to a good first pass again on what the redesign of this creature is and how it could work. Let's turn on some color. So we need to be, whatever color we're going with, it's probably all going to be the same or roughly the same for now. Considering we're kind of coming from this direction. This is kind of if it's all dark, what the abstraction of the shape should be. From here is where we started this stream. Well, here to here. So definitely a big adjustment in this character. And then we've also got quite a bit going on here as we've resculpted a lot of this face. That's not it. This one. And then we're also playing around with the idea of the reveal of something kind of happening with this face where it would split apart. Now, where does that go? Maybe parts of it like go to the crest of this thing. Maybe it is the crest of that thing. Yeah, this is not an easy one, but we're not going to go for the full, production ready asset here. This is going to be have like two little tiny hands. Maybe those will be like what the chin turn into here. And then we probably need to just decide what the eyeballs, where those go. That's kind of what I'm really deciding at this point. What do they look like? Where do they go? And I think I'm just going to paint in some black to test that. I think we could do something like that. We could do a ton of them. Kind kind of the idea of this, where it's like there's little holes. Maybe a lot of them are holes, and a lot of them have eyes in the holes. There's not like a single, sometimes you'll see like a spider where it's like a spider with like eyes. Don't really want to do that. Sometimes you'll see like one large one and lots of tiny ones. The idea of something big though does sound nice. Just kind of cartoonizes it relatively quickly. You get like a big thing and you're like, oh, there's the eyeball, right? Or get some of that spider look back. I'm not sure I really want that. Kind of like this more than other stuff, to be honest. Doesn't really make sense, but obviously all this is, I don't need, like the geometry I'm using is pretty, I kind of like this one where it's like simpler. I give it like a more of a central focal point. I think you could still do the change underneath it. I can get rid of all this red. It's acting weird with my masks. I'm gonna try this with the mouse. I'm gonna undo all that. And I'm gonna subdivide. We have about 10 minutes left in the stream today, by the way. So if you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to ask them. Otherwise, we're gonna head out in about 10 minutes. I like this idea of feeling like armored. We'll fill that with a darker color. think we're getting there. We got some ideas, and it's definitely starting to feel like it ties in to me, which is nice. Some of these shapes from one to the other, which we'll need. And this would give like a nice, I don't like that arrangement. It would give a nice, setup of where some things could be going. We could turn off symmetry and kind of just dot them around. All right, yeah, I think we got a good starting point for this. And I kind of want to bulge some of these a little bit so that this is a little more obvious. So now we got to figure out how this is going to change. I think we got a really nice starting point for the pushing this further. That's kind of the way that I like to work, is I like to work in a very iterative manner. So if you we'll save real quick and I'll kind of show you some of the previous ones that we've got again to kind of give you context. But let's see, switch to white so we can see that. This is where we started. And we had kind of made at that same time, we had made a small spider. And then we had taken all that and made a big one. And said, well, maybe if it's a bigger one, and we didn't have a body then, we just had this shape that we had kind of sculpted to get us in the right direction. And then from there, we took that and expanded on it. So the spider at that point, I think, is basically the same, more or less. But we spent some time sculpting on this face quite a bit and adding a body and getting some gesture in there from here to here. And then I took her in my own time and sculpted a while and kind of put a little more pose into her. I still like that kind of cross-legged stance. And there doesn't have to be a reveal. We'd kind of done that idea, and I still like the idea. But I do kind of enjoy this character, so I'm debating if it's worth, is it worth making it just a reveal? Maybe it is. And then we spent some time sculpting a little further. I don't like this one more, actually, rather than the big eyes. They both read good. I think I like this head more, so I'll probably copy this back over. But what we were doing with this head is we were exploring the idea of being a reveal where it would morph, being some sort of a spider head. Maybe it would have been attached to this spider. So this is kind of where we ended with that one as compared to here. So I'm going to just copy I'm going to copy this pose and this head in. Clone. Clone. This one. Hide this. Delete this. Insert this. So we'll hide that head. And then we'll hide this little dress. And below here, we'll have this extra pose so we can compare. Kerrigan-ish, right? So from here to here. I still do like the puppet idea. I still like the face split idea, but it's, I don't know, it is such an obvious reveal. I do think it would be cool. I think it'd be a cool cinematic moment. But there's something really appealing about the companion, you know, where it's like this is like this weird, creepy creature that she has to like continuously feed things to. So this is before and this is after today. Oh. I kind of like it being separate. I do kind of like it being separate. I like the idea of the reveal. I think it would be a fun idea to do the reveal. But I'm just kind of growing more attached to this character and trying to make this. This feels like she would like grow them or something. Or it's like something she's like been given or something. All right, y'all. Well, it is 1 o'clock, so we are wrapping up our art jam. Thank you, everybody, for joining our creepy spider character that we're working on today. We'll be continuing this over the following 2 streams, trying to get this completed. So join back next Wednesday from 10 to 1 Pacific time. We also have an event this Thursday, so take a look at that. We have I think we also have something this coming Friday on our stream. So take a look at our social media and you'll be able to check that out on Instagram. We have our streaming schedule, so feel free to check that out. And thanks again. I'm going to save this one last time. We're going to close down the stream. Hopefully I'll see you all next week.